You're gonna
going
clean my grill.
to,
You're gonna make sure my car gets service.
yes, you know it,
Thanks.
because that's just the kind of girl I am.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, leave a comment. We are totally interested in what you have to say around things that are interesting to you about our conversation, as well as future conversations that we're going to have. Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, girlfriend.
We're in person.
What a treat to do this again in person.
I know. So let's be clear that there have been several other times that we've been in person and we could have recorded podcasts, but we're just so into each other that often we don't get to it.
Sorry, not sorry?
Not,
No.
not.
But we have the opportunity today, so we thought that it was a great day to talk about attraction.
Yes.
And more so about the role that attraction plays in committed relationships, long-term relationships, whether it's marriage or not, and just acknowledging the changes that can occur. And then what do you do about it?
Yeah. No changes here. However, changes can happen elsewhere.
Yes, this is true. This is true. And well, what I can say is that as a sex therapist and in there a couple therapist, it's really one of the most frequent reasons that couples seek out couples therapy and particularly sex therapy.
Yes.
Couples therapy, usually it's they're fighting, there's life issues they want to make decisions around. There often are also sex life issues, but in my experience, people are not seeking kind of generalist couples therapists for that. They're coming to sex therapists and their sex life is not what they want it to be, either for both or for one person. But at least one, if not both, are dissatisfied with how it is and want it to improve in some kind of way. And their biggest question is, what do we do?
Yeah.
How do we make it better? I love this person, but I don't want to have sex with this person. Or I love this person and I want to have sex with this person, but I don't think they find me attractive anymore.
Or I want to have sex with this person, but not in the way they want to have sex.
Yeah, that's a big one. Glad you said that.
Super interesting because in my work as a relationship coach and with human design, a tool that I use as well, it's super interesting to be able to look at the design of two individuals and give answers as to like what's going on and why potentially there are differences and why certain things are tricky for the other person. So,
And that would show up around people's sexuality, particularly.
yeah. It's really interesting. So,
Imagine people knew that. Imagine we all knew things before we went into the relationship with the person we're in relationship with.
yes.
Well, anyway, that's lovely. That's not how it is. So it's neither here. We don't need to spend too much time on imagining it. Yeah. So my experience of couples when they are coming to me to enhance, improve, change, etc., their sex life is not knowing how. And often they've tried or they tried talking about it, but it's not turned to action. And I have a handful of things that I tend to recommend. But maybe before we go there, what are your thoughts on the normalization of how sex lives can change for people in relationships?
Yeah, so sex lives are subsets of lives, right? Our sexuality is a major aspect of our lives. And so just as we fluctuate as humans and change and grow, so is the way in which we have sex and what we need, what we want, certain things were great in our 20s but are not great anymore in our 40s. Like we're allowed to change. And so really owning that is possible and most likely going to be the case. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just echoing how really, I'd say typical, but not as in one should expect it, but that it shouldn't feel unexpected necessarily, or it's not a surprise and it's actually not even indicative that there is an actual problem when things are hot and heavy and then they stop being hot and heavy. Like that's normal relationship development over a course of time, months and years, where there are literal different phases of relationships. And the hot and heavy, for those who even get to experience the hot and heavy, because in my experience, some of the couples, they never even had the hot and heavy to begin with, but they were able to have some kind of erotic connection. And then after some period of time, whatever they did have also sort of dissipates.
Yeah, agreed.
I also think that, I mean, a big piece of it is attraction. And I think attraction has so often been whittled down to physical attraction and to how I feel when I look at this person and see their face, their body, their clothes, their external presence, right? Yeah, their externalness. And I will say, certainly for myself, that since maybe ever, but certainly since like middle and high school, I was in that camp of when I felt attracted to someone, it was really predominantly based on how they looked, their body type, their, just their whole physique and appearance. And I found myself to be in many situations, college and on, well, yeah, college and onward, I guess, where I either felt like I was really physically attracted to someone, but I didn't love their personality, or I thought they were so great and well-rounded and whatnot, and maybe cute, but not hot, and it didn't stir up that same kind of passion and excitement. And I long wondered if both could coexist in a relationship or within even the same person, which of course I have come to learn that it can, both personally and also professionally over time. But that was a really lingering question for me for a very long time.
Yeah, for me, I recognize that I really have enjoyed the personality, the energy, the being of individuals since I was younger. And when I think back to all of my crushes, to include my first preschool boyfriend,
Mm.
just like being able to feel the heart of an individual and that being the predominant factor in my attraction. I identify as pansexual, and so that energy being the most important thing.
Really the personhood of the person.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when I think about, I've had a lot of experiences in past relationships where I was attracted to the person up front and in the beginning, and then it consistently went away. And sometimes it went away for identifiable reasons and sometimes unidentifiable reasons. But certainly one thing I came to realize is how much emphasis I was putting on the physique and the physical and kind of forgetting other pieces that are part of attraction. Not forgetting academically, right? But just in my actual experience or in my heart, and realizing later I actually stopped liking this person, right? And I think we talked about this in one of our earlier conversations around healthy relationships or toxic things, how important it is to really like the person you're in a relationship with. And even if we're not going yet to the recommendations and the to-dos around revamping connection and attraction and eroticism in a long-term relationship, one of the things that's really paramount is liking your partner and liking things about them and finding things about them that you admire or noticing skills they have that are attractive, right? And even just how they treat other people or their kindness or generosity, right? Like there's so many qualities. We're so multidimensional that I think over long term, all of our other qualities are really, really important to hold space for because how we look changes. Also, right? Our bodies change,
Definitely.
our everything. We're growing and changing and aging all the time, right? And so things are shifting, and that can affect how we feel about ourselves, how we view our partners.
I think for me, part of the attraction conversation from a electromagnetic standpoint, part of my work stuff is like attraction is energy, and it is the energy between the person and a thing or another person. And so there is a live wire of energy that is enlivened, and it becomes this active internal mechanism inside of us that is informing how we interact with a person or a thing. So, as creatures with awareness, we are very much aware of, I see that person that I am in relationship with. How is this electricity?
Mm.
What's the quality of the feeling that I have of this electrical current in this moment versus when we met 10 years ago?
Like literal atoms bouncing off of each
Yes.
other,
Yeah.
electrons. If you will.
Electrons, if you
This
will.
is so over my head from a metaphysical, electromagnetic field space
Yes.
perspective, but it's really interesting to think about.
Mm.
I like I like that analogy maybe of attraction as energy. And so even just talking, even a language paradigm shift of, am I attracted to that person? But, how are we energetically connecting? How am I feeling in that person's energy and vice versa? Right. And it does make me think of some couples I've worked with where one partner expressed stop losing attraction to their partner. And when I look at some of their dynamics, the person who, when partner A loses attraction to partner B, and partner B has become depressed and withdrawn and doesn't leave the house very much and maybe feels more pessimistic about things. And, I'm thinking of this one couple I worked with, and what we came to learn is how much the partner B, the woman in this case, she had really just lost her own relationship with herself.
Yes.
And
she wasn't buzzing.
She wasn't buzzing.
Yeah.
Right. She had taken a dive in her own life and still did things she liked, but she had become more insular. And so she wasn't on her, energy with herself, I suppose, right? Or in that space of doing what she loved, of doing what she's good at, of excelling in her own personal sphere, of operating in a way that felt very independent. And for this guy, he experienced a lot of feelings of needing to take care of her. And I will say, and Esther Perel talks about this in almost every talk she has, about there's no desire in caretaking.
None.
Right? And for good reason. And right, caretaking tends to evoke this parental type quality in us. And when that shows up in our partnerships and we feel that way, it doesn't mean I feel like I'm your parent, but the nature of taking care or feeling like I have to take care.
Energetically, there is a...
Right. There's a shift. The hierarchy changes, right? And that's an important distinction from the value and importance of supporting a partner and caretaking or caring for in different ways, right? We take care of each other. But when couples are struggling with sexual desire and their eroticism, I'm always looking to explore if someone feels like a caretaker of the other one, or if someone is expressing unwellness mentally, physically, spiritually, however, and it's evoking this feeling in the other person, right? And that stuff will shut down any kind of libido and desire for most people.
And there's like varying degrees of, the caretaking and the person being cared for. The place in which someone is like searching for maybe they're looking for a job, or they just had, all these different life circumstances that create this change and shift in the structure of the energy that once was. And when that occurs, so many things are possible where you can, one partner can find themselves in a space of resentment or just frustration. Like, why don't you fill in the blank of whatever once was? And it can be really, really tricky. So I think in this conversation, it's an opportunity for people to look at what is actually the story of us right now in the moment, and what was once the story before, and what has shifted in the time that we've been together, to get a accurate assessment of where you are now as a couple.
Yeah. And I would almost bet that each person in a couple in such a situation is going to have a different story about that.
Yeah.
Right? My story about you is that, and then your story about me is something else.
Yes.
And even though we might both be experiencing a drop in some kind of energy or connection or attraction or sex, we have different stories about why that's happened. And it's absolutely, yes, to get, not just to get on the same page, but to at least voice what those stories are and debunk the myths that might still be perpetuating, because we believe ourselves. We're very convincing to ourselves. But something you said before about this piece had me thinking about couples as this ecosystem and just systems theory. And I won't go nerd out on that per se, but just thinking about...
You can nerd out on me.
I will nerd out on you, but that's later.
Later. Excuse me, and we're back.
Okay.
Sorry.
Focus. So distracting. How's my lip gloss?
It's good.
Still on?
It's good.
Hi, we're back. Okay, commercial break. Back from this commercial break. There you go. Not blushing while I blush.
We discovered.
Oh, that's your ears.
Yes. We discovered I blushed.
Where were we? Tell me what we were talking about. Ecosystems. Okay, nerding out on you. Done. Later. Check. Okay, so systems theory right, will posit that if any shift occurs in a system, it's going to affect the whole rest of the system. And maybe not immediately, but there will be some kind of effect, right? It's like the butterfly effect. So looking for a job, it doesn't even have to be something, again, often it's not that obvious, but even like you said, taking a look, taking inventory of the actual relationship factors. What's going on in my relationship right now? What's going on for each of us individually? What's going on? I have a lot of couples where they're, yes, we find each other attractive. We're still interested in sex, but I'm worried about my aging mother over here. And I have all these things that I'm committed to over there. And I have all these work deadlines. And I promised I'd take my niece to an event. And people are just overwhelmed with responsibilities. Everything we do takes energy, and
Yes.
energy is finite.
Yes.
And so I try to support people, I imagine you do as well, to how do you harness the energy you have and then learn how to allot it in all of your different places so that you have enough energy for the relationship.
I think that is pure gold, because identifying that yes, energy is finite. When you talk about attraction, and if my energy that once was bubbling up when I see you, come home from work, we now are in a space where I've got 5 things that are on my list that were not there before. That means my energy being finite is bing, 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 designated to all these other things and lessened in totality for what once was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the interest of time, let's talk about what are some ideas or tips, if you will, or suggestions for how people can not necessarily harness the energy per se, but just,
I would say harness the energy.
okay, let's say it.
Let's play with that.
Great.
Harnessing
How
energy.
can people harness the energy? How can couples, how can individuals in relationships harness their own and their relational energy to bring it back or keep what's there?
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's not going to be possible to have 100% because
Right.
you have 1 to 5 children and a mortgage and a job and, just all the responsibilities that one could have as an adult, young and or older adult. And how do you even keep the energy you have and tend to it?
Right. I think for me, my number one would be recognizing the relationship as its own distinct entity. And when I come together with you, when I am interacting with a friend or a family member, whatever is between us, the two of us, we've created a third thing. And so in my relationship, I'm acknowledging that this third thing is so important, right? I desire it to be full. I desire it to be, the forefront of my mind. In the same way that I care about you, I care about us and our joint connection and the health of that connection. And so that being said, I can look at my commitments, my obligations to these 5 things, and know that in the way that I'm meant to interact with other things in my life, how can I continue to be contributing, adding to our relationship in that third thing, even though these other things are going on. And so you and us are never in the back, but rather you are in the front, even as I'm doing my other life things.
Yep. Absolutely. And what I hear you talking about really is a consciousness and a prioritizing of our connection.
Yeah, I definitely would say yes, that would be almost like a traditional way in which it's been described universally. And also, I think the concept, and this is not the concept that I, came up with, but I can't recall who this comes from. The third thing that we've created being acknowledged in relationships, but when you view it as its own living and breathing entity, like a baby, you're not going to leave the baby on its own, right? You're tending to the baby. It's not like consciously I'm aware of the thing, right? It's like, actually, how do I feed this baby?
Yeah,
and see what it needs.
absolutely. I don't know where that came from or who originated that idea, but I definitely have used that principle for years, that there's me, there's you, and then there's the us. And the us is the third, right?
Yeah.
And it goes, that works in so many different ways that it could be applied of there's my way, and there's your way, and how often are people in power struggles about whose way should be the way. And there's rarely a lot of movement there until people can understand and recognize that there has to be a third way, which is a little bit of mine and a little bit of yours, and really just a third way that only gets to exist because we are both coming together in this relationship, right? And so, yeah, consciously contributing. And I will say, certainly in my work, one of the biggest barriers for couples to enhancing and improving their erotic connection is time. There's just not enough time, is what people say and feel. And somehow the relationship, that third entity, gets pushed lower and lower and lower. And all the other things get addressed first, or energy is invested into all the other things first. And then whatever's left over kind of gets maybe the relationship, if the relationship's lucky enough to even get the leftover energy, right? But time. And so, I literally just had this conversation the other day with a couple of, they both work so much and they only spend time together 7:30, 8 o'clock at night when they're both back and maybe they're having a meal. And by that point, they're both they're done for the day.
Energy is
they
done.
have clocked out of their day. And then they find themselves wanting to connect and wanting a lot of things, but not with the mojo to even to make the investment. And we talked recently about, we can't obviously add more hours of the day to the day, so we have to restructure how we use our time. And we talk about this all the time in terms of our long distance connection, but intentionality. This stuff does not happen by itself.
No.
And it's never going to happen because two people will just wish it could or want it to. Everyone, I always compare it to making a reservation at a restaurant, like in terms of scheduling time with the partner when you have busy lives, of you want to go eat at that restaurant. So you make a reservation, and that guarantees that you will get a table. You'll get a table and you will have a meal. And it's up to you to show up for the reservation. And you're certainly welcome to cancel it. It's not a requirement, but you show up.
I'll say that it's interesting because, when you do, like, say, for example, the love languages test, right? And people have different experiences with one of the 5 that's like quality time. And
yes, that is so mine.
And the thing that's so interesting, I think you could have quality time as being 5th, as like the least important, but also if you don't have quality time, all of the other pieces, they require some amount of intentionality in time. And so if it's words of affirmation, like, I need to not have this like one-off experience with you once a week. Like, you can tell me all this yumminess.
Nice stuff.
Yeah, but like, I need to feel your energy, to feel safe, to know that you are sincere in these words that are coming from you.
Sure.
Right? It can't just be like, this quick
You
moment.
look great, babe.
And then I'm filled for the week.
I love you.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
That's such a good point. Although some of the other love languages, I think people can get away with enacting without time, because people, even acts of service, right, which is a huge one. It's, well, this is how I'm showing my love. Maybe I'm uncomfortable with a certain level of intimacy or looking into each other's eyes, but I'm going to clean your grill, and I'm gonna go take your car to get service, and I'm going
clean
to
my grill. You're gonna make sure my car gets service.
Yes, you know it.
Thanks.
Because that's just the kind of girl I am. Grill cleaning, car servicing girl. No, but yes. So, right, people do all sorts of things to show their love, and you're right that does take time, but those are things almost people do by themselves. It doesn't include the other person. It might be for another person, but that's not intimacy per se, in the way, at least, that I think we think and talk about intimacy.
It's definitely speaking to a part of someone, but it is not speaking to the internal. Acts of service used to be one of my top ones. And, to have a partner that would do this thing for me. And everyone's like, oh God, I just am so attracted, like in this moment. Like they've checked this box. I appreciate it and it feels great, but it never was like evoking the energy of like desire and attraction in that way.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that updating your relationship to time and how you use your time, and even time management, thinking about it as energy management rather than time management. I can have a lot of time, but if I'm going to spend all my free time watching TV,
Scrolling on my phone.
right, I'm using energy for that, which is, we know it's finite. We're going to run out of energy. Our battery goes low.
Like that thing is it's getting my laughter, it's getting my smiles, it's getting my joy in that moment versus it coming as a result of shared yumminess between me and my person.
Absolutely. So time, we know intentionality is huge, and understanding the importance of saving enough of your energy for your person and for investing in the relationship.
Can I just really quick, you're gonna remember what you're gonna say? Not just saving as much of your energy for that person, but like giving them the best. Giving them the best of your energy.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's so much more abundant than using my reserves.
Right.
Saving a little bit for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Like, what if my
absolutely.
person got the best of me? And
What a great question. Let's ask that again and just sit with it for a second.
what if my person got the best of my energy? Can you imagine a world where all the couples just gave each other the best of their energy?
That would be so beautiful.
Yeah.
And many do and many try, right? People certainly are doing their best and trying their best, and it doesn't mean it's not enough.
And some people, like I showed up at the beginning of a relationship, 0 to 3 years, giving you the best, and it wasn't reciprocated. And that person woke up and finally started doing it, but the other person was like,
Yeah, totally.
so many different iterations.
Absolutely. I'm really a big fan of scheduling time together. I recognize I might be a broken record, but it's just how important
Yeah,
I think
it's
it is
totally.
that there's such a role for spontaneity. Absolutely. And I understand that people like that. And a lot of people feel hesitant and reluctant to schedule intimacy. Again, dinner reservation. I want to go to Nobu, downtown New York City. You can't just walk in when you want to. I mean, not that, at least that I'm aware of. Right? You have to make a reservation and make sure you get a seat at that table. And that's what you want. You want a seat at the table of your relationship.
And Nobu's perfect, like one of the best, right? Like the best in our connection. Like schedule the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It certainly needs to be stated too that for couples seeking to reconnect or maintain, sustain, however, wherever you are in your relationship needs, communication, of course, is paramount and foundational to even get to the point where you can have these conversations, even to the point of, hey, we want to change something here, right? And the openness to listen to one's partner and hear them, see it really as a collaborative team effort rather than a blame and shame game.
Even playing field.
Yeah. I have a feeling that this is just scratching the surface
I think so
of
too.
a very
In-depth study, if you will.
yes, it's just a much
Conversation.
longer conversation.
Yeah.
So, I could see us having multiple episodes addressing different aspects.
Right.
But what I would invite, I can't tell you what to take away from this conversation, but even as I say it, what I continue to take away from the reminders of it all is time, intentionality, making time, conserving my own energy so that I can really give my best to my partner, and, learning how my partner wants to be loved and working on giving that and hoping that's reciprocated as well. And also normalizing and acknowledging how the changes can happen. And if we have little kids together, just depends on the people.
Yeah.
But that's going to have an impact on eroticism. And it's not the end of the world, but it is something that deserves to not be ignored if it's important to you.
Yeah. Amen.
I feel like it's just the introduction.
Yeah, this is really the introduction. There's
Okay.
a huge conversation that gets to come from this, but this is absolutely foundational. And it's easy to listen to this up until this point and say, like, I got it already.
Right.
But when you really understand the mechanics of relationships and what truly works and creates the quality of a relationship, you understand that this part is paramount. You don't have this figured out. If you don't have a healthy relationship with this type of information, this level of relationshiping, if you will, then everything else is rocky.
Great. Well, thanks for being here with us.
This was great. And we're in person.
Mm-hmm.
Cute kiss. Yeah, stay tuned for future episodes. Stay tuned for future conversations regarding attraction and sex and sexuality. It's layers upon layers. Get your hand in here. Layers.
Get my shit to
Friend.
Bye, girlfriend. It's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on the Love Beyond Limits podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please feel free to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes.
Be sure to follow us and join us next time.
I might do. And I have to pay.
Okay, we gotta do it. Be sure to follow us and join us next time as we continue to break boundaries and celebrate love in all its forms.